Hey y'all, welcome to the Circle of Healing podcast. I am so happy to have you here. Tonight we're going to dig in. I want to talk about our episode 2. Our episode 2 tonight is going to be the grief no one talks about. When we think about grief, we automatically think about death. But I want to talk about the grief that um, no one talks about, the non-death losses. I'm talking about identity. I'm talking about friendships. I'm talking about divorce. And I'm talking about life transitions. Those are some things that you also have to grieve. And tonight, that's what we're going to dig into, and that's what we're going to talk about. So settle on in. Do me a favor, like, share, and follow. Like, share, and subscribe. Y'all help me out. Help me get my numbers up. The Circle of Healing, we are on the move. So let's just talk about this thing tonight. And today we're going to talk about a kind of grief that many people carry quietly. Yep, I said that most people carry quietly. So grief that does not always come with a casserole, a sympathy card, or time off from work. Let me repeat that again. Tonight I want to talk about a grief that does not come with a casserole, a sympathy card, or time off from work. Tonight I want to talk about the grief of losing a version of yourself, the grief of a relationship changing, the grief of divorce or separation, the grief that comes with life transitions, motherhood, career shifts, empty nesters, illnesses, spiritual awareness. This is what I call invisible grief. So tonight I want to talk about invisible grief. And if you are holding it, I want you to know that your grief is real. Even if no one named it. Even if no one has named it. Take a deep breath with me and notice which invisible grief you may be carrying right now. Take a deep breath with me. What's that invisible grief that you're carrying right now? Because once you name it, then you can heal from it. But until you name it, you can't heal from it. So the first one tonight I want to talk about is I want to talk about identity loss. Identity loss. Loss of who you thought you would be, career changes, health changes, motherhood, aging, spiritual shifts, feeling unrecognized to yourself, grieving dreams and expectations and old identities. These are some identity losses. Can you identify with any of those? One of the hardest losses is looking in the mirror and realizing you don't fully recognize yourself anymore. I remember a time in my life when I simply looked in the mirror and just didn't know who I was. I could give myself all the attributes of, being a mother, being a wife, being a daughter, being this, that, the other. But at the core of me, I had no clue as to who I was. Life had beat me down, dreams of, career and the way you would think your life would go, all those things were shattered for me. And I remember looking in the mirror, not being able to identify who I was. But not because you're broken, but because life changed you. So that sometimes is the reason why you don't, when you look in the mirror, you don't recognize the old person. And it's because life circumstances, different things that have come upon you on life has changed you. And unfortunately, we always are seeking to have the life that we are comfortable with, the life that we've lived, the life we've always known. But sometimes circumstances and in different situations, like I said, career changes, health changes, motherhood, aging, spiritual, shift, fatherhood, whatever it may be. But the one thing I want you to understand is that you can find yourself again. But the first thing you have to do with that identity loss is that you have to identify what you lost. What has caused you to lose yourself? What has really caused you to lose yourself? And you are allowed to miss the old version of yourself. Believe it or not, about maybe 3.5 years ago, I made a life-changing decision, and I've lost over 125 pounds. Okay. And I did that for health reasons, but sometimes I find myself missing the old version of myself, because it seems like now when I go into the store, I see cuter clothes in, heavier set plus size, full figure women now than I see in the smaller. So sometimes, I used to grieve that. But then I had to realize that if I would have kept that weight on to be able to get into those clothes, then I probably would be wearing those clothes in a casket, because my health would have declined very fast. So I just wanted to just tell you that it's okay. But then you have to recognize what damage that may have caused or may be causing, because you're trying to be an older version of who you now are. Growth and grief often happens at the same time. Let me say that again. Grief and growth, or growth and grief, often happens at the same time. You can honor your past self without abandoning who you are becoming. A lot of times we carry the guilt of us trying to move on with our lives, trying to, identify who we are, and we feel guilty about that. And we don't understand that we are outgrowing who we were to become who we want to be. The more you continue to work on yourself, you'll understand that you cannot. It's just like, you think about it. You got these pair, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I had the opposite. The other day I had a pair of jeans in there that, you know what I'm saying, they were like super way too big for me, but they were the cutest pair of jeans, right? So, I don't even know why I even tried them on, because I already knew that they were going to be, super big. But I tried to make myself fit into them, because I didn't want to get rid of them because they were so cute. But then when I thought about that, I'm like, why am I still trying to fit myself into something that I can't fit? It's the same thing with your life. Stop trying to fit your old self in your new self. Stop trying to drag along the old you that no longer serves you any purpose, or some of the old traits that no longer serve you purpose. You have to understand that it's okay. It's okay for you to allow yourself to miss it, but at the same time, understand that you have to grow and grieve at the same time. And you can honor your past self without abandoning who you are becoming. You don't have to downplay yourself. You don't have to downsize yourself. And you don't have to shrink yourself. That's something I really have been working on I would say, this last year, is not shrinking anymore. A lot of times, I've always played the background person. I've always made sure that, I'm saying, things, happened, in the background. I'm saying, and then now that I'm out front and I'm, I'm saying, forward, I feel guilty. I feel like, I'm saying, I should shrink. But then I realize and I understand that the assignment that I have now on my life is that I have to be upfront. So that means I cannot shrink if I'm supposed to be upfront, leading people to a movement of healing. And so because I am working on moving the people to a place of healing, I can't do that from the background. But the thing about it is that I know how to play either one. If it's whatever needs to be done in the background, I know that I can also do it as well. But I know that's not where I have to stay. And that's what some of us do. Let's be real. Some of us shrink ourselves to fit in with, different, statuses in life, different people, different situations. You know what I'm saying? Even on our jobs, even, you know what I'm saying? Even at church, even, you know what I'm saying? Every single place, you know what I'm saying? We kind of do that. Even in school, at different places, different settings, we shrink ourselves. Even the gifts and the talents and the things that we know we're supposed to be doing, we shrink because we don't want to be talked about, or we don't want to be seen like that, or whatever. But I have come to a place after 50 some years that people are going to talk whether you do good or whether you do bad. So you might as well do great so they can really basically just be a chatterhead about you. So you don't have to shrink. And becoming your new self doesn't mean you're starting over necessarily either. Sometimes it does mean that, but no, it always don't necessarily. Sometimes it just means you just need to continue doing what you're doing. And then sometimes it means you need to stop doing what you're doing and basically pivot and do something different. You know what I'm saying? So I need you to understand that about this identity loss. I need you to understand. I need you to face it. I need you to work through it. I need you to understand that if you can name it, you can face it, then that means you can grow. You can grow from it. But until you can do that, you will basically stay in that state of grief because of loss of who you think you were supposed to be. Have you ever thought about, like, what I'm saying, you said, oh, I wish I could have went to school. I wish I could have did this, or I wish I could have did this or whatever. The one thing I know about it is that as long as you're taking a breath right now, you still have time to do it. It's a way to do anything that we want to do. It's too much technology out here. It's too much whatever it is. But just know that whatever you're trying to do, it's got to be grounded around your purpose. Once you ground this thing around your purpose, then you got it. But you got to heal from it. Then the next thing I want to talk about relationship grief. I'm talking about relationship breakups, rarely get closure, outgrowing people. It's possibly can be a betrayal, maybe a distance, a life change, social media, and what I'm saying, maybe it's just, intensifying, silence of your grief. But the one thing I want to talk about is, like, sometimes you do outgrow people. Sometimes you do outgrow relationships. Sometimes you outgrow friendships and relationships. And those feelings are valid. Those are valid feelings. especially when it feels like a betrayal. You know, I went through that. I went through a really I had a friendship, and when I tell you, when that relationship ended, it kind of really broke me because it was a betrayal behind it. And when I tell you, it broke me because I thought so highly of this person. You know, I saw so many great things in this person, and to be betrayed by that person, I mean, that thing really hurt, and that thing really, I grieved into just the the closeness that we had. And then, even though we were kind of cool, but it wasn't the same anymore. And I had to grieve that. Now I had to treat this person a different way. You know, I had let them in my inner space, and now I had to put them in a category with, the outside. And that hurts, especially when you work hard, to, what I'm saying, it's hard for you to let people into your space, and it's hard for you to trust people. And especially with me, it's hard for me to just say that word friend. I mean, it's very hard. Like, I mean, I literally don't have any. The most recent friendship I have is maybe 10 years. Everybody, all my other friends, I've known them 20, 25 years or better. So that tells you that I have a very close net of friends. So therefore, I value those friendships. And then some of them, I don't even see them on a regular basis or talk to them. But when we get together, it's just like we were just saw each other yesterday. So that's how strong I love. I love hard. I love friendships hard. I love people hard. People that in my space, I love them hard. And to be betrayed by that person, it felt like a chain was broken. And I had to, for a moment, I had to push everybody back. I had to push all of some of my friendships back, because I had to make sure that, okay, I really thought I knew this person, but they did me like this. So that made me, like, side eye, what I'm saying, everybody else. And then once I was able to heal, and this is, what I'm saying, and it took me a while, and then just recently, I'm going to say over the last 2 years, I really just started re-embracing and bringing those, and then not only that, making apologies, and, what I'm saying, for those friendships, and saying, hey, I'm sorry, what I'm saying, I pulled away, it was nothing you, I just had to reevaluate some things, I was hurt. And I had to take the time to heal. And because I had to take the time to heal, I didn't want to bleed on nobody else. You know what I'm saying? Not only that, I understood that these were strong friendships. And that because this one person betrayed me, don't mean that my close net of girlfriends or you know what I'm saying, and friends are ever going to do that to me. Because they're one. So a lot of times what we do is that we group that together. And then sometimes you outgrow some friends. Now, I definitely can talk about that. mm, I definitely can talk about that. I can talk about outgrowing people, you know what I'm saying? Especially when, you haven't seen them in some time or whatever, and they still talking the same crazy stuff that you were hearing like when you were in your 20s. And now we 50. You still talking about turning up. You still talking about going to the club. You know what I'm saying? You still talking about turning up, turning up, no. Now what I'm about peace. I'm about healing. I'm about growth. I'm about anything that basically that's gonna level me up. You know what I'm saying? And now, don't get me wrong, I love a good time, and you know what I'm saying, I don't really do the clubs. I don't really do the clubs like that because I did that so many years. But that's all we can talk about. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about investments. I'm talking about land. I'm talking about property. I'm talking about leaving a legacy of healing. I'm talking about retreats. I'm talking about, you know what I'm saying, the largest speaking engagements. I'm talking about being on the largest platforms. I'm talking about healing a nation of people. And you talking about you know what I'm saying, the latest, you know what I'm saying, foxtrot or boot scoot, whatever it is, you know what I'm saying, line dance that you done did every single weekend for the last year. You know what I'm saying? That, you know what I'm saying? Or, you know what I'm saying, our conversation had, and you know what? And then another thing also is that how you, and let me give you one of the things that you may not even know if you know whether or not, if you've outgrown a friendship. When every time you talk to somebody and you know your friendship always has to go back to y'all history of, like, you know what I'm saying, it's okay to go down memory lane, but if the only thing you guys have in common is basically going down memory lane, then you might have started outgrowing, or you may have outgrown that person, because if that's all you can talk about is the past things, y'all not going down the same road of them saying some things that y'all can align with. mm, you know, you might be outgrowing them. You know what I'm saying? You might be outgrowing them. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, you know, just think about that. Is that something you're gonna have to grieve? Yeah, sometimes you grieve it because you staying connected to this person when you know that time is up. Sometimes people are in your life for a reason and season, and sometimes people are there to stay forever. You know, and that's the facts that we have to, you know what I'm saying, you know, face, you know. And then sometimes I realize some people now, we like just social media friends. You know, those are just those type of relationships. Those are just those type of, you know what I'm saying, you stay connected through social media. And you know, and I guess that's okay too. But I'm talking about those close knit ones where, you know what I'm saying, that friendship ended. It was like, you know what I'm saying, it cut you, it hurt you, but you now can recognize that you don't have to put everybody in that category. You don't have to side eye everybody. You ain't got to side eye everybody. Friendships and friendship grief is unique because the person is still alive, but the connection isn't. See, friendship grief is unique because the person isn't dead, they're still alive, but the connection isn't the same. And sometimes there's no clear ending, just a quiet drifting apart. Can you relate to that? Can you relate to, you just don't even, some relationships or some friendships or whatever it is, you don't know what happened. All you know is that, you know what I'm saying, after a while, time went on, time went by, more time went by, and some more time went by, and you look up and it's been years. And you're like, oh, what happened? What happened with us? What happened that caused us to drift apart? You know, what changed? You know, I could tell you right now, like, I'm kind of like in a place where a couple of my friendships, you know, I know that like they are in different spaces in their life. Like, I'm an empty nester, you know what I'm saying, free bird, just ready to go. But then I have friends that, you know what I'm saying, still are in the, you know, mom, you know what I'm saying. Don't get me wrong, I'm still in motherhood, but I just don't have to mother like that anymore. You know, that still basically have to, you know, pack lunches and, you know, give baths and, you know, get babysitters, you know. And I love those friends, but then but then I long for those friends that, hey, if I say that let's jump on a plane and let's go to Vegas for the weekend, I don't want nobody that's gonna have to find no babysitter. You know, so sometimes and those are the people, and sometimes the ones that are in that state, those are the ones you want to rock with right then, because you know, like, you know what I'm saying, you really want to go have a good time with them, or you really want to have a girls trip with them. You know, so this is really, in this season for me, it's really stretching me, number one, to become more social. Once again, that's me coming forward. That's me not shrinking and putting myself in situations where I can be able to, not everybody's going to make it into my, you know what I'm saying, my close, you know, circle, but to be able to make a network of ladies and friends that are on the same level of things that I do. That's a form of healing. That's a form of healing relationships that, you know what I'm saying, that have drifted away, relationships that ended, all of that. That's a good way, you know what I'm saying, to, now put myself out there. You know what I'm saying? Going to women's events, going to social events, just being present and just being seen. Being seen and not being shrunk. And then the next one I want to just, kind of wrap the whole friendship up on is that friendship heartbreak is a real heartbreak. I can tell you that friendship that I ended, when I tell you it was really a heartbreak, it really was a heartbreak. It was really hurtful. It was really, what I'm saying, it was a pain there, because I felt so dearly about that person. And not only that, I know how dearly I hold on to people. And then, not all friendships are meant to last forever, but that doesn't make them meaningless. So remember, I said some people are in your life for a reason, season, and sometimes they are there forever. But sometimes some people are there just to basically support you along the way. Support you along the way. You think about it. Some friends, it's almost like, if you look at it on schooling, you have a certain set of teachers from, grade school, elementary. Then, you have a different set of, teachers that can teach you the curriculum, in middle school. And then you move on to high school. Then, college. If you think about that, in each one of those stages, you gain new friends. Think about that. You gain new friends, and then some of those friends that you have from elementary, you may have about 4 or 5 friends, and now you have a clue. You probably sitting back and saying, I wonder whatever happened to. I know the other day I said that. I said, I wonder whatever happened to my elementary friend so and so. Every now and then that'll just come across your mind. But then you got that middle school friend that, hey, you see them like, y'all kids pretty much, y'all still live in the same area. You got kids that may be going to school together. It's just different circumstances. Then you got that college friend that's been your ride or die. Or then it might be some high school friends that you guys have been friends for 20 plus years, and then you've outgrown each other. So, I want you to understand that. And then you can grieve someone and still wish them well from afar. And just because me and this person are no longer friends, I wish her no ill will. We're now went from having an intimate relationship, or, you know what I'm saying? When I mean intimate, I mean just in my circle. You got to be clear out here now. But now, her being in my inner circle to now she's just my social media friend. You know what I'm saying? And I'm okay with that. I'm okay, you know what I'm saying? Every now and then a DM fall in. I'm okay every now and then a like or share on both our ends. And I wish her nothing but the best. And when I do talk to her, that's what I basically, you know what I'm saying? That's the energy that I give. And anything you're doing, I'll cheer it from afar. That's the type of, and I'm that different type. And maybe you say, you know what I'm saying, how can you think like that? How can you do like, you know what I'm saying? Or, you know what I'm saying, maybe you think I'm capping on that. Let me tell you something. I ain't gonna cap on that, because when I tell you I was able to forgive the young man that murdered my son, my 19-year-old son. So if I can forgive him and have no hard feelings in my heart, forgiving a friend is nothing. It's nothing. Okay? So no cap over here. No capping over here. And the last one I want to talk about, and I'm going to wrap this on up, is I want to talk about divorce and relationships ending. That's my little puppy in there, y'all. He's I tell you, he's a watchdog. He's a watchdog, and he ain't no more than about 5 or 6 pounds. So he's just going in. I'm in there. But my last talking point I want to talk about is I want to talk about divorce and relationships ending, loss of shared dreams and future plans, identity shift after partnership, co-parenting grief, relief and grief coexisting, shame and isolation. Divorce grief is layered. You may grieve the relationship, the family structure, the dream, and even the version of yourself that exists inside that love. You can feel relief and sadness at the same time. Yep, relief that you outed, but sad that it ended. Ending a relationship doesn't mean it didn't matter. I think that's where we get messed up at. We think that, you know, all that time we spent was just wasted. No, it really did matter. Because what it taught you is it taught you what not to do in the next one, and what to look for in that next relationship. And making sure that you have a standard and clear communication of what you need and how you communicate that. Because when you think about that, that's a life transition that you're grieving. That's a life transition. Think about it. Moving, becoming possibly an empty nester, retiring, diagnosed with health challenges, spiritual awakening, becoming a caregiver. Hats off to caregivers. That's a beast. So shout out to them to be able to, care for loved ones and be there, because that's a non-stop. That's an obligation that you say only it's me that can do it. You fight that one. So I give hats off to that. And then we look at the spiritual awakening. I want to tell you, like, maybe that's for another episode, but when I tell you I have been deconstructing all this stuff that I was taught, and knowing not all of it, a lot of it won't even right, but and working through that. I'm grieving the fact that, I'm saying, some stuff that I thought, or there's some things that I thought was, was God, want him, and so it made me reevaluate, how I look at, my spirituality, and the awakening of, who I am, and the core of who I am, and, what I believe. But sometimes life will give us the very thing we prayed for, and grief still shows up, because every new beginning asks us to release something behind us. And that's where I want to land at tonight. That's why I want to land at. Sometimes life gives us everything we've prayed for, everything we've asked for, everything we've manifested, everything that, every very thing that we've wanted and we prayed for, and grief still shows up. Because every new beginning asks us to release something behind us. So when we're releasing something behind us, that's what we've been doing. We've been naming those things. We've been naming the things that we are grieving, so that way we can begin again. You cannot begin to start over until you can face these griefs outside of death. Because gratitude and grief can coincide together, they can coexist together. Transitions are both birth and loss. You don't have to rush to adjust. You gonna need time, and your nervous system's gonna need time. All of these things that you are facing with grief. And a lot of times we pray for it, and then when that grief show up, we add more things. You know, we always talk about retail therapy. We always, you know what I'm saying, talk about, buying something or doing something or going somewhere, doing something. But what if we just take the time and then just grieve it? Just grieve it, deal with it. Because the one thing about it is that, let me teach you something about this grief. The one moment, the moment that you can take the time and name it, it's almost like you taking the cover off of it to take the the guilt and the shame, the sting of the guilt and shame. And because as long as that thing has you in a hold, you always gonna feel guilty and you always gonna feel ashamed. So that's one of the first things that you're gonna have to do. And if you ever want to begin again, or if you ever want to continue, doing whatever your life purpose is, you are going to have to deal with these grievances outside of death. The everyday ones. The ones that cause us to basically to be bitter and depressed and mean and angry, and behaviors up and down, and just not who you don't even know who you're looking at in the mirror. Grief will change you. Holding on to holding on to the loss of identity and life transitions and loss of relationships and all of those things. I need you to understand that all those things not only just impact you physically, mentally, emotionally. You are on a roller coaster. But the one thing about it is, even on a roller coaster, it has to stop at one point. So the thing about it I'm asking you to do is just get on the roller coaster. It's gonna stop eventually. But you gotta make the first step and you gotta get on it. Look, I am gonna end right there. This is our second session, and we're talking about grief beyond death. And if this helped you tonight, I want you to like, share, subscribe, and hey, I'm going to talk to you real soon. We got some good stuff. We're going to see what the session number 3 going to be. I don't know yet. I think we're going to keep digging here for a little bit because I think we can go deeper. And I hope you have gotten something out of this. And like I said, this is your girl Vonda, and I'm going to talk to y'all soon. And y'all have a wonderful week. All righty? Bye.